Hello everyone, welcome back to our daily issue analysis. Hope you all are doing good and revising very well and definitely making notes, organized notes for your mains. And yes, do keep revising whatever issues we are covering or whatever you are following, follow routine and keep revising. Then only it will be effective. Otherwise, we will just keep gathering, and if we're not revisiting them, then we will be not able to use the information in our answers. Okay, so let's start for the day. So today we are taking this topic of India UAE relation, and this is very important because it was in news. And why it was in news? You must have come across this news. PM Modi hails UAE's help during pandemic. This is 1 week back. You must have come across this news. Modi's visit UAE for first time after BJP's official derogatory comment regarding Holy Prophet. Or you must have come across this news in Indian Express, the significance of PM Modi's visit to UAE. So this visit to UAE by Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji was very important because it was after G7 summit. It was a very short trip, but it was a significant one because PM Modi's visit was he visited it with four objectives. So what were the four objectives of the visit? The first objective was to pay respect to the late president of UAE, to pay homage, to pay respect, and also to reset the ties after the profit controversy by Nupur Sharma. And the third was with respect to cooperation over West Asian Quad, or it is also known as Middle East Quad. And you must have come across this when, if you have followed my videos of prelims, there we have discussed about Middle East Quad because UPSC has asked this question somewhere in prelims MCQ. So that in that context, we have already discussed about it. And also the focus on military ties. So these were the four objectives of the visit, which was a very short trip after G7, and it was considered significant. And in fact, it has been hailed that more than G7, it was one of the significant visit of Honorable Prime Minister, that is UAE's visit. Okay, so this is why it is in news, and we should know in depth about India-EU relationship, about issues, history, and way forward, everything. So let's start our discussion. Let's understand a brief background of relations before we understand the areas of cooperation between India and UAE. So this relationship started in 1971 after the creation of UAE Federation. So in 1966, the relation started under the H. Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan. And when subsequently after UAE was created as a federation in 1971, since then our relation started. Later, the diplomatic relations between both these sides were established since 1972. So in 1972, we started our diplomatic relation, and since then, we are continuing. Also, very recently in 2017, bilateral relations they got a boost because of this comprehensive strategic partnership in 2017. So the Crown Prince he visited India as a guest in Republic Day for Republic Day celebration, and it was considered UAE started considering India as a strategic partner. Even India started considering UAE as a strategic partner. From there, it started our comprehensive strategic partnership in 2017. That gave a momentum to what we are reaping today or what we are going to celebrate in future. So this is a brief background of relations between India and UAE. Now we will discuss about the areas of cooperation between India and UAE. So last time also we have discussed whenever we were discussing the issue of BRICS summit. So there we discussed that how we should analyze the issues and the cooperation under different subheads, under different categories. So in the same manner we will do that. So we want you to inculcate this habit of thinking in the same manner so that you can write in the answers also in the same manner. So the first area of cooperation we are going to analyze is in the field of strategic cooperation. So UAE occupies a key place in India's West policy. So India's West policy, UAE is playing very important role. Not only that, our extended neighborhood policy, UAE is the key component, or UAE plays very important role. Also, very recently, at regional front, quadrilateral economic forum, which we were discussing, this West Quad or Middle East Quad. So that is economic forum is being created at regional level. The members are I2U2. So I square, U square, maybe you can remember this way: Israel, India, UAE, USA. So this is these are the members. And especially after the Abraham Accords, when Israel and UAE they want to improve their relations. So after that, it opens up the scope of regional cooperation or economic cooperation in the region, and India is playing key role there. Also, not only that, UAE stood with India on JNK issue when we removed Article 370. At that time, UAE supported us. So these are the areas of cooperation from a strategic point of view, that why UAE is important for India, why India is important for UAE. Let's analyze other areas of cooperation. Analyzing the cooperation from energy point of view, that is energy cooperation, if we analyze, then UAE remains very important player. It is one of the key energy providers to India, which the oil imports which we are getting from UAE is, it accounts for 8% of the India's total oil imports, and thus it makes UAE fifth largest supplier of crude oil to India. Okay, so this is very important because it is an aspect of energy security, and we are dependent upon UAE. Next is Strategic Petroleum Reserve Program. So UAE is the first international partner to invest in India's Strategic Petroleum Reserve Program. So we started this program, and at prelims level, whenever you would have prepared, you would have come across this information, that how many strategic petroleum reserves are there in India and what is the location. So there are total six locations, and three new have been announced. Three were there since they are old. What is the purpose of a strategic petroleum reserve? The purpose is that whenever there is any crisis situation, maybe war or pandemic situation, or there is shortage of oil, or maybe prices are very high, or oil crisis is going on, and for those conditions we should have a strategic petroleum reserve, so that our economy can run and our needs can be fulfilled. So for that purposes, India is developing, it has come up with the strategic petroleum reserve program of for storing the oil. So UAE is the first international partner to invest in India's strategic petroleum reserve. Okay, and not only that, the International Solar Alliance, which India is implementing at global level for solar energy. So UAE has collaborated in this renewable energy project, renewable energy sector. So these are the areas of cooperation where UAE is helping us, and we are also dependent upon them. So these are the energy cooperation areas. Let's understand the area of cooperation from trade and economy point of view. So if we analyze, UAE is the third largest trading partner for India after USA and China. And every year economic survey releases the data. But yes, that is important for prelims, which is the top three, top four, top five countries. But yes, for mains, this specific information is important, that UAE is the third largest trading partner after China and USA. Okay, then UAE's investment in India are very important, and UAE is one of the leading sources of India's FDI. So UAE's investment in India stand at 11.6 billion, and which makes UAE ninth biggest investor in India. So you remember this much only, that it is UAE's investment in India is around 11.6 billion. That much is sufficient for substantiating your point. Okay. Very recently, ONGC Videsh and Indian Oil Corporation Limited, they have also paid around $600 million for 10% stake in UAE's offshore oil field Zakum. So this was the news. ONGC Videsh led consortium picks up 10% stake in UAE's Zakum oil field. So this is being led by, consortium is being led by ONGC Videsh. So this is very important, and this makes first Indian investment in upstream oil sector of UAE. So that is the significance of trade and economy from the trade and economy point of view. Revamped FTA. So very recently, India has revamped FTA strategy. So government of India has come up with this early harvest deal, and six countries have been identified for such deal. So UAE is one of the those countries where priority is being given for early harvest under the revamped FTA. And very recently, this SEPA has been operationalized. So SEPA has been operationalized from May 1st itself. And this is very significant. This is a milestone achievement. Why? Because it was just finalized within 88 days. And with so many countries, we are struggling from so many years for finalization of SEPA, but with UAE, we have finalized it just within 88 days. And it is going to, the promise or the expectation is that it is going to increase our uh, this bilateral trade from USD 60 billion to USD 100 billion. So as you can see, this was in news somewhere around 1 week back that from this Kerala is reaping reward from India's UAE bilateral comprehensive economic partnership, which came into force from May 1. So this is very important. And why it is important? Because this is going to give preferential market access for the Indian exports to UAE. 97% of tariff lines will be of India's export to UAE will get preferential market access. So be you take any export, be it gems and jewelry, textile, footwear, pharmaceuticals, they will have enhanced access in the UAE market. So Indian service providers, they will get benefit from it. So it is very important step for from the economy point of view. Now we will analyze the area of cooperation from security and defense point of view. So with respect to security and defense, the first point is combating terrorism and radicalization. With the spread of radicalization in Gulf countries and South Asia, India looks to enhance the security cooperation with UAE to combat it. And India has its own experience of managing the terrorism and radicalization of youth, which is happening. So India is not only helping UAE, but also we both are learning that how we can manage. We are both are cooperating that how we can together combat terrorism and radicalization. So even experiences are being shared. Also, there are joint exercises. The first one being Desert Eagle 2. So it is a 10-day air combat exercise where India and UAE cooperate together for military preparedness. Also, Milan exercise. This was held in February 2022, and India invited around 46 friendly foreign nations in this multilateral naval exercise. So remember, it Desert Eagle is a air combat exercise and Milan exercise is a naval exercise. So UAE was one of those 46 nations which were invited. So this is important. Not only that, India also participated in exercise Desert Flag 6, which was conducted in UAE in 2021. So, like that, we are cooperating on Desert Eagle, Milan exercise, joint exercises are there. Also, the strategic location of UAE plays very important role for managing the security in the Indian Ocean region, especially the Somalia-related piracy issues in the Horn of Africa area. So, in the area of Horn of Africa. So the UAE's presence and its cooperation will be determining factor for the security in Indian Ocean region, and India and UAE are cooperating on at this front also. Now we will analyze the next area of cooperation, that is people to people. So that is very important because Indian diaspora is 3.5 million strong in UAE, and this is huge. And it has been a constant provider of jobs. UAE has been a constant provider of jobs to Indian people. That's why it is important. Also, very recently, UAE has come up with golden visa system where they are providing long-term residence visa. Long-term means 5 to 10 years for the foreigners to live, work, and study in UAE. Okay, so and that too without any need of any national sponsor. So there was a criteria of national sponsor. So under golden visa system, that has been done away recently. In fact, if you would have read news or if you follow Bollywood actors, so actor Sanjay Dutt received the golden visa from UAE government. Okay, so this was in news. Next, cooperation during COVID-19 pandemic was very important. Both countries, they helped each other. So UAE was among the first country to receive India's indigenous co-vaccine in February 2021. So this is also important. Not only that, during pandemic time, both of the countries, they agreed for air bubble management in 2020 during during pandemic to enable the movement of people seamlessly from one country to the other. So that cooperation was done during 2020. Also, the Skill India Center has been established in Varanasi. So there is Dubai-based DP World and India's National Skill Development Council is there. So both have signed an agreement and they are setting up a Skill India Center in Varanasi. What is the purpose? The purpose is to train the local youth with respect to logistics, port operation, or allied areas where the Indian citizen, Indian pool, Indian labor, Indian resource can help UAE in those areas, in such areas. So it will help in pursuing overseas employment for the Indians. So this is one of the area of cooperation at the level of people to people. Next area of cooperation is related to space and technology. So yes, India and UAE are collaborating over resource exploitation, remote sensing, usage of the space and satellites. Also together, the two space agencies have developed nano satellite, cube satellite known as NEAF. So it was launched in 2017, NEAF 1. Okay, so this was launched from Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota. Also, the two countries are working together on Red Planet mission of UAE. So these are the areas of cooperation related to space and technology. Next and the last important area of cooperation is climate and sports. And yes, in nowadays, whenever you are analyzing any area of cooperation with any country, any bilateral or multilateral fora you are talking about, do analyze the issues from climate point of view as well, be it cooperation or issues or dialogues, whatever is happening. Okay, so the first point is related to cooperation in ISA. We have already seen that how UAE is also cooperating in India's vision and India's step of International Solar Alliance. So this is one. Next is with respect to Vision 2021 of UAE. So UAE is trying to now diversify energy basket apart from crude oil. So they are venturing out into renewable. That's why they have taken a step in. They are cooperating in ISA as well. So they have a vision where they want to diversify their energy basket. So on that front also cooperation is there. Also, there is a cooperation going on countering the desertification, which is the effort is that it should not increase, and also because of the climate change, the extreme weather events are increasing, and the chances are potential is there that the desertification will increase. So both the countries are cooperating with each other in order to counter the desertification. With respect to sports, we know that both the countries have started collaborating. How we can see that in the last moment we saw that IPL 2022 2020 was also conducted there. Not only that, T20 World Cup was also conducted in UAE. So both the events were earlier scheduled to be conducted in India, but in the last moment UAE provided the support and it was not cancelled. So nowadays this cooperation is also increasing. So it is a potential area. In order to analyze the significance of India and UAE relation, remittance is one of the important aspect. Remittance to India from the Indian diaspora is huge, and it is in 2020 it was somewhere around US dollar 83 billion. Okay, so that is huge. So a substantial portion of remittance is coming from UAE. Next is strategic center. So we know that UAE, due to its strategic location, is emerging as a very important economic center for the world, for the global trade, and it is also very important to counter China's influence in the Middle East. That's why for India it is again becomes very important player. Also, from the security point of view in the Indian Ocean region, we earlier we have discussed that how the collaboration can help to counter the piracy in the Indian Ocean region. Okay, not only that, it is gateway to other West Asian countries and also gateway to Africa because of the strategic location. Okay, regional groupings. So regional groupings, we know that because of UAE's influence. So if you remember when Sushma Swaraj was Minister of External Affairs, so UAE invited India as the guest of honor to their regional groupings, that is OIC membership. So OIC groupings, meetings. So because of India's influence and because of UAE's influence in the region, Sushma Swaraj was invited. So that is the influence. So regional groupings, India is now being seen as a partner, at least not in the like as a direct partner, but at least the honor is being given. Also, from the soft power point of view, India's soft power diplomacy is helping, and a good relation with UAE is enhancing India's soft power in the Middle East. And this can be seen when Dubai and Abu Dhabi they celebrated Diwali in 2021. So that is the influence of soft power diplomacy or the soft power in the region. Now we will analyze the issues in the cooperation. So starting with the first issue, which was very recent, that religious polarization or the religious sentiments were hurt after the comment of Nupur Sharma, and that is one of the agenda why Honorable Prime Minister visited, and it was one of the four priorities to reset the ties after the comment on Prophet Muhammad. So this is one of the very much recent issue. Then ongoing issue is related to the kafala system, and this kafala system is very a system where inhuman conditions are imposed on the immigrant laborers from India or otherwise from everywhere. Also, until unless the employer gives a certificate, nobody can leave the country. So that is like curtailing the liberty, dignity, and many inhuman conditions because of which it was in news on and often. Also, related to barriers to trade. So there are many non-barrier trade barriers, non-tariff barriers, NTB. Non-tariff barriers are there. So UAP is something related to sanitary and phytosanitary notifications, which are related to poultry, meat, processed food. And in fact, the technical barriers to trade notifications related to fish, meat, rubber, etc. So they pose challenge for the Indian exporters. So these are the barriers to the trade. Also, China's checkbook diplomacy is a challenge. China is offering low, in fact, very low interest rate to the companies there, and it is crowding out Indian companies from UAE. So this is also one of the threat. And we know about the Arab-Iran conflict, Shia-Sunni conflict. So these conflicts they hinders India's engagement in the Middle East region. So these are the issues which are there in India-UAE relation. Now comes what could be the way forward in India and UAE relations. So way forward can be addressing the trade barriers as we have discussed. So the trade barriers should be addressed. So our FTA agreements they should bring more transparency and predictability in the non-tariff barriers. So we need to address that. Next is about more strategic dialogues like on the lines of 2+2 dialogue. More strategic dialogue should happen so that we can curtail the issues which are there in our relationship. Also, we know that we have discussed about UAE's Vision 2021, where UAE is trying to expand their energy basket. So this is basically opportunity for India because if they want to diversify their economy and energy basket and they want to reduce dependency, so India can fill that gap. India can provide the opportunity in the renewable energy sector, startups, fintechs, and many areas. Okay, and addressing the issue of immigrants, the kafala system. So active engagement is required, so that will happen only when the diplomatic relations will improve or the collaborations will be more. Okay, and also there are emerging areas where new areas are there where UAE India can engage with UAE. So it can be with respect to medical tourism, it can be with respect to defense, trade, food, agriculture, automobiles, emerging new technologies, industrial revolution, AI. So these are the emerging areas where India can offer help or India can offer collaborations. So this is all about India and UAE relations. Hope you enjoyed the discussion. And with this understanding, if you're going in the examination hall, trust me, if you just revise it again and again, then only you will be able to replicate it on the paper. And after this, you don't need anything. So focus on revision, then running after the materials. Okay. So revise well. Take care. Bye bye. We'll meet in the next video.